I'm a little frazzled because a tree just fell on me. I don't know if that's your welcome. Maybe it's an Indian thing. But back to you. Did you know the tree fell down? Okay.
News travels fast.
Yeah.
I think, if you have a book when you talk about how the state of everybody is frazzled, everyone is frazzled. We thought we'd put on a little something for you, frazzle you a bit. Yeah, so we thought
that's cute.
And we thought we'd see whether you could get up some mindfulness and face that. But you seem to be doing great. You seem to be here. You seem to be all together.
Yeah.
And so on with the show. As you probably heard, or if you read a little about Ruby Wax, or the young lady who come up and do the car crash of your life and times in one paragraph, you'll know that there are several Ruby Waxes around. One is a television presenter, one is a comedian, one is a Shakespearean actress of repute in the Royal Shakespeare Company.
I wasn't that good.
Well, that must be a first. I don't think I've ever met an actor who ever said. You should use the mic for those little ones.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
so,
yeah, do you want me to go on?
No.
Okay.
I'd
like to hear who else I was.
TV
I was
show
a great
host.
canoeist when I was a small child, if we go the other way.
So TV show host, etc., etc., etc. I was just wondering, is there one in which the entire self is invested? Is there one in which means more than the others? Is the writer as important as the stand-up comedian, or how does it work?
Part of my book, How to Be Human, is about really there is no self. You know, who I was when I was 8, 13, 25. I'm only 26 now, so I can't go any further. Thank you. When I crashed a course at one point at University College London in neuroscience. I'll go back to who I was. And it was filled with 21-year-olds. So I told them I had that disease where you age really fast. And do you understand this? And then, eventually I told them I was lying, but they liked me anyway because I was the one with the car. So it doesn't matter what age you think I am, but we're all different selves at every point. You know, there's a reinvention every time. And, you know, unfortunately, we used to die at 30, and now we just go on and on and on. So, unfortunately, you have to reinvent. And at one point, I was on television for 25 years on the BBC, and I was editing Absolutely Fabulous. You don't know what that is here? Oh, 2 people, 3 people, that's okay. And then, you know, your time is over because I turned a certain age and that's not allowed on television. You know, it's an atrocity to be older. So I left the party before it left me. And agony it was because you work all your life for that. And so I had to reinvent quickly because I have depression badly. And at that time, I ended up in an institution, and I thought, I don't want this to happen again. Well, of course it will, but I want to do something about it. So I got interested in psychology, which I went to Berkeley when I was younger, and I swore I'd always go back. So I read about what had the most positive results, and it seemed to be mindfulness and cognitive therapy. Mindfulness sounded way too gluten-free cushion. I didn't want to sit on it. I don't have time. But I wanted to find out about it, so I hunted down one of the founders of Mindfulness Based Cognitive Therapy, and he was at Oxford, and I said, tell me what goes on in the brain, because if I can't see it or I can't taste it, I don't buy stuff. You know, don't throw me an angel card. So he said, well, if you want to get into Oxford, if you want to learn about the brain, you'd have to get into Oxford and get your master's. And so I did, and nobody was as surprised as that man. So that's what happened. Then I went to Oxford. Then I had to write my dissertation, so I wrote it. And then I turned it into comedy, and so the book exists. So I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Thank you. And so this self is my happiest because you can't take it away from me.
It's just the question that I was thinking about was that if you suffered from depression, how did you manage to go into such overdrive that you say somewhere in one of the interviews that you just got into, or in the book I think you say you got into the RSC just on the drive of your personality. So
I wouldn't say that's mental illness.
I'm saying is that what is the play between that intense drivenness and the possibility that there's a dark shadow lurking in a corner somewhere? Is there a play between
No,
those?
there is no play. 1 in 4 people, I'm 1, 2, 3, you. 1 in 4 have mental illness. It doesn't know what your insides do for a living. It's like saying, people say, do comedians have depression? Well, do all weather girls have shingles? No. It has nothing to do with it. Jennifer Saunders, who wrote Absolutely Fabulous, is one of the most boring people I've ever met. And I always tell her. And it has nothing to do. If you're in showbiz, you may be running from something, you may be neurotic or narcissistic, but mental illness, there's a division. It's a sickness that needs medication. And when I'm being funny, I'm funny, and when I'm ill, I can't be funny. So it's got nothing to do with it. And by the way, the only reason, my friends all say, how did you get into the Royal Shakespeare Company? Because it's as big a mystery as who shot Kennedy. They can't figure it out. But I was a very good country wench. So, with my little shepherdess thing, and I could speak early porno, which was, "Oh, no, kind sir, you mustn't touch me, kind sir." Anyway. And then when I was acting on stage, some people would throw me little wads of paper while I was acting that said on it, "Maybe you should think of another career," while I was acting, while I was speaking. Yep. Anyway, then Alan Rickman, I don't know if you know who he is here. Yeah. So we were in a house together, and he said, you're really bad at acting, but you speak in a humorous way. He said, write down how you think, and then I'll direct it. So he directed me for the next 30 years and showed me how to be funny. And so he was my mentor.
Showed me how to be funny?
Yeah. I probably was funny, but he always said, don't show desperation, because I showed desperation. He knew how to hold back and make an audience, deliver it like you're asleep, or, if they don't laugh, tough luck. And then he would do my lines, and he was hilarious. So I would imitate Alan.
Do Alan Rickman
No,
doing
I
your
can't
lines?
do it. It's too long ago. It's too long ago. But when we lived together, I won't go into it.
Come on, go there.
No, let's talk about my book.
Sure, but surely that's in your book as well.
It's not. I didn't write an autobiography.
Okay, are you planning to at some point?
No,
It might be a stream.
I did 50 years ago, and Carrie Fisher was my editor, and it was really dark. And unfortunately, I was on TV at the time, so they thought it was one of those celebrity books where you talk about, some TV show or somebody you've met. But my family's really dark. It's got nothing to do with show business, but I did leave Chicago because of them. And I wrote about my parents. My mother was insane. The Viennese, where you order something off the menu, it sounds like you're declaring war on Europe. People come out of the kitchen with their hands up. So they were nuts. Yeah, my mother used to clean the ceiling with a Q-tip. Everything covered in plastic. So I had to escape, and I thought London they'd have to cross an ocean. And my mom couldn't sponge that up fast enough.
So how to be
So I did write an autobiography. It sold 2 copies, but thanks.
So coming back to how to be human, isn't that the default setting for all of us? Like, aren't we just born human?
Let me just say the book before this was called Frazzled, a mindfulness guide for the frazzled. Now, everybody's frazzled. We're supposed to be stressed. That's how we have mojo. We're supposed to be stressed, but the illness we all have is that we're stressed about stress. It means you're sabotaging your own thoughts. This is what's burning us out now. I'm not good enough, nobody likes me, I'm a fraud. That never happened in history. In history, way back, we had predators, and when they attacked, then we would get, the amygdala would arouse, and we'd squirt that cortisol. And then when the incident was over, the cortisol would come back down again. We'd go back to the day job. And now in this society, everything is a threat. Nothing is behind us, to attack any moment. But because we're never good enough, social media is we're not supposed to know globally what's going on. It's too much. There's too much choice. And part of our little brain is still Stone Age. So it doesn't know the wallpaper's changed. And that's why we can't deal with a lot of the complexities. Part of us is genius. You know, we made, I don't know, apps that can get you a husband at 3 o'clock in the morning. But cognitively, we're idiots. You know, somebody said, evolution only cares about your survival. It couldn't give a shit about your happiness. If you want happiness, you have to find it. Nobody ever has. That's why they have enough self-help books about happiness that could cover the globe about 47 times. But I do tell you how to find happiness, so get the book.
That's all they say. So, emotions then. You know, I think you say somewhere that emotions are like you say it's a bad joke, but it's like a bad wife. You can't do without them. You can't do with them as well. What would life be like without emotions, do you think? If you managed that wonderful...
No, first of all, the book, How to Be Human, I dissect things that we really don't talk about. You know, we don't know ourselves. You know, we know how to make this unbelievable eye candy, but what we're equipped with, nobody wants to look in. I mean, we know about outer space, but very few know about inner space. So I wrote the book with a monk and a neuroscientist because the monk is very, you know this, he knows the science of the mind and how we think, and then the neuroscientist substantiates where that is in the brain. So it's a kind of a love affair between the two of them. And I always tell people that we met on Tinder. We didn't, but I say that. And I got the monk. He lives in my home now. It's not to say, I got him because he matches my sofa. But they're both brilliant. And since we tour a show together in the UK now, with the monk. They're on in the second half. And I say, since they've been in show business, they've become impossible. So, but they're brilliant. And at the end of each chapter, which tells you what influences made us human, you know, again, to understand that certain things were perfect hundreds of thousands of years ago, it worked perfectly. Now, it trips us up. This is why we now have burnout. You know, it's simple things like competition. We needed that when we were in small tribes. All these emotions helped: shame, guilt, competitiveness, comparison, because, again, we were at our peak when we were in small tribes of about 50 to 150 max. We were all friends. We knew each other's first name. Bit of a problem. We were all related, so, you know, same gene pool. So some people had feet grown out of the back of their head. But, oh, I'm sorry. I'm giving you facts. So anyway, all these things, competition, we needed it so that if you were not pulling your weight in the tribe, your need to improve would improve the situation of the tribe. And again, for survival, you would be in a stronger position. Now we're competing with each other, and globally, you'll never win. You know, it's not improving anything, and you will never win. And so, I don't know, little girls, when I was young, used to compete for who's the prettiest and who's the most popular. Again, these kids are burning out because they can't compete with supermodels or Russian hookers who make 3,000 pounds an hour. They're never going to win. That's why there's low self-esteem. And I haven't started on the men.
Start on the men, then.
No. Did you want me to talk about emotions?
Why not?
Well, first let me talk about thoughts. Again, I said to the neuroscientist, where are thoughts? You know, why do they make us so miserable? Where are they lodged? Is it a little man up there with a bullhorn? Why are they so terrible? And we believe them, and he explained, but it was incomprehensible. So that's why it's my book. So I translated what thoughts are. Would you like to hear that? Would you like to hear? All right. Sometimes okay, I'll let you figure it out. This is what thoughts are. Then we'll get on to emotions, if that's okay. Yeah. All right. So just go with me on this, okay? The neuroscientist then in the conversation says it in neuroscience speak, but this is my speak. Okay, this is thoughts. Okay, imagine your thoughts being manufactured by a single queen bee sitting in her larva in your brain, okay? For those of you who are new to neuroscience, there's not an actual bee in your brain, okay? Okay, around her are helper bees. Okay, she has some valet parking bees. Zzz. She has aromatherapy bees. Zzz. She has room service bees. Lots of bees. Okay, so now imagine that the queen wants a cup of coffee. All right, so immediately bees start showing films of coffee in her visual department. Other bees start manufacturing the smell of coffee in her smell department, and the movement bees are manipulating her legs toward a Starbucks. Okay? Do you understand? Now, the queen thinks she wants the coffee, but she's deluded. It's all the bees in their separate departments sending in their votes to make her go for the latte. So when you think, oh, I think I'll have a dry, skinny cappuccino made by Peruvian eco-slaves, you'll buy and drink the coffee while other bees are making plans for you to want a chocolate muffin. Okay? That's thoughts. Thank you. And then, of course, the neuroscientist explains why they're so negative, which they're supposed to be. Again, for our survival, I could tell you what the neuroscientist says. That out of 5 thoughts, approximately 4 are negative. Somebody said we're Teflon for positive thoughts, but Velcro for negative ones. So the neuroscientist, of course, it's a little boring, but he explains it like this, but it's very clear. You know, when you're going down some stairs and you trip, let's say on the 4th stair, your brain remembers that, and it's lodged in your memory, because you have to remember what happens every time I go down that staircase. So we really, in our hippocampus, register when we do something wrong. If you're happy or you make it down the stairs, it doesn't actually get into your memory. So when things are going well, you actually don't have to register it. So really, when you're happy, try to remember it.
Screwed up.
Well, it's evolution.
Well, evolution screwed us up.
Evolution, it meant the best, it really did the best it could. And we wouldn't be here today. You can thank your ancestors for being paranoid enough to get you all in this room. So we could give them a little round of applause, the ancestors. There you go.
If you were receiving these 2 bees, let's say there was a neuroscientist bee and there was a monk bee. Mm-hmm. Was this monk bee and the neuroscientist bee saying pretty much the same thing, or was the ruby wax bee synthesizing what the monk bee and the neuroscientist bee was saying and producing a third kind of honey?
Oh, that's good. We've been together for 2 years now, and we've sort of become one mind in a way.
One bee.
One bee. We've just made
rat
it
bee, a king bee.
Well, I am the queen. Let's remember that, and they're my worker bees. All right. So it's so interesting. The neuroscientist looks at the meat, which is the brain, through scans. The monk is about understanding the mind. Now, also, the monk, because it's his day job, teaches meditation, well, mindfulness, let's call it. And it's about learning how thoughts carry us away, and emotions carry us away. Again, for survival, if we didn't think, we'd be a houseplant. We have to think. But again, in this world, we're getting too carried away. So we're moving away from what's really important. It's that rumination that keeps you. Why didn't Bob call me back? He didn't call me back because he hates me. Why does he hate me? Because everybody has this. This makes me feel so good. We're not supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to be flawed. Look at the person next to you, completely flawed. Look. Look at him. See, underneath all that sparkle, they're a fuck up just like you are. Okay. But these thoughts, you can never get rid of them, okay? That's not the idea. But the act of practicing this mindfulness is to be able to observe the thought. Now, they still come in. I'm still getting the news report, you're an idiot. I have themes. Everybody's got themes. People are looking at you like you're a moron. This man hates me. You know, I've got them playing. But because I'm used to it, you know, because I practice mindfulness, they're more like a radio in another room. And you kind of go, oh, yeah, for whatever reason, maybe I don't want to go into analysis, those thoughts are there, okay? But if you let them go and you don't latch on and really try to find out why does everybody hate me, because they don't all hate you. I mean, you really do, but you don't. Somebody doesn't. You don't take them so seriously. You realize that thoughts really are, somebody said you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf them. So some are nice, some are mean, some are adorable, some are pornographic. They really just move on through. And when you need a thought, for my work, I cling on to that. But when the garbage starts coming in, you're not writing well enough, you're never going to sell a book, you let that go. It's like you're sieving through garbage. And mindfulness is a technique. There may be better ones, but at Oxford, they weren't offering witchcraft. So I thought, well, maybe there's something to mindfulness.
Witchcraft also sounds like not something you would be averse to.
I wouldn't be a bee.
This is true. But I think
That didn't make any sense.
just listening to you also is that there is a great deal of extremely serious information that you're passing on. You're talking about very important things like mental health and about our attitude to ourself, which is kind of like very far from self-loving or self-nurturing. And yet you use a lot of humor in it. Is that intentional?
Far from self-nurturing?
Attitude to ourselves, we don't generally nurture the self. We don't love ourselves enough, which is why we keep this radio. He hates me, she hates.
We don't have time to love ourselves because otherwise some guy will beat us, You, again, you can never do enough. There's too much choice. You can't win in this kind of a world. It's almost like, so what I'm trying to say in the book, it's not your condition, it's the human condition. And to me, that's such a relief to know that everybody's got the same equipment, really. If you look under the scalp, it's similar. And then I used to just like people who with mental illness because they were my people, but now I like my tribe is expanded because everybody understands this.
Or is everyone suffering from some form of mental illness?
No, mental illness is a disease. It's not and then frazzled is, look, there's people who not. There's people who are they have the genetic makeup to be positive and adorable, but it's very hard in this culture to wake up in the morning and feel okay.
And is humor an essential part of the way that you communicate these ideas?
I only use comedy because I have dyslexia, and I can't form a sentence unless I'm playing jazz in my head, because I don't know how words come together, and people think it's humor, but actually I'm illiterate.
You're?
Illiterate.
Illiterate, okay.
Yeah.
So for an illiterate person, you've written an awful lot of books.
Luckily, a lot of people speak illiterate.
That was lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah. This notion that the whole world is frazzled because of the intensity of our choices and actually the magnificence of the buffet in front of us. Like it's this big, huge buffet, and we could all be watching like Roma or something like that, and be doing this, and should we be doing that? It's like almost as if a blessing went awry, it went really bad. Like the whole blessing collapsed on us and we are sitting in the middle, wondering what to do. So are you going to tell us the way out, or are you going to make us buy the book?
You have to pretty much buy the book.
Which sort of brings us to the end of the questions that I wanted to ask. But this is Jaipur, it's an interactive event. You are not an oil painting. This is an extraordinarily accessible and funny woman. Jaipur, ask your questions. I'd like to see a show of hands.
There's a hand back there.
Okay, there's a hand right at the back in a dark red shirt.
Run.
Yeah.
Run, like the wind.
He listened.
He did.
Wow.
Well, no, he's slowing down now.
Yep.
Hi.
Where are you?
Right here.
Where?
In the center.
You intercepted that mic very meanly.
Where
the
are you?
gentleman with his hand up was the first person.
You go. Okay.
Stand up and grab the
You
mic,
can go
young
first.
man.
It's fine.
Don't. Be kind. Be kind.
I think you can go first. I don't mind.
Thank you. There's a lot of recent research that has been done about psychoactive substances and their effect on neurochemistry. and their possibility with helping with depression, with anxiety, and other mental illnesses. Sorry, yeah. So I'm wondering what your opinion on that is, and what your personal experiences with psychoactive substances have been.
I only took it once.
Really?
Me and Clinton. It's not my specialty, that area. I know that they're looking for molecules in psilocybin and even in ketamine, and God bless somebody who can stop this depression. Medication, which I've been on since the beginning of time, is only guesswork. It's like setting a fire to a whole forest, but one tree is sick, and one fell on me. So it's the dark ages, but maybe with these psychopharmacological investigations, maybe they'll come up with something. I will kiss the ground when they do, but no money is spent on that. But that's a whole nother story.
Thank you.
I hope the answer is psilocybin in its entirety.
Firstly, congratulations. This was one of the wittiest sessions I've attended. I've been coming for 5 years, and that includes Stephen Fry, and I have never laughed as much as I have in today's
good.
session. So congratulations on that. My question is, what is your view on high-functioning depression? So a lot of people who are, going through a lot of their daily tasks or probably are affected by something or probably mental illness, but they are not able to kind of differentiate whether this is, are they burning out, or is it lack of motivation, or are they genuinely mentally ill? So how do you exactly kind of figure out where you are in this spectrum?
I don't quite understand the question, but burnout is different than depression, because ironically enough, when you are depressed, you're moving through cement. So it has nothing to do, I can really work, and step on it. And the reason I do mindfulness is because I can hear early warnings of the depression. It speaks a different language. And before in my life, it was like a tsunami. Suddenly your old personality leaves and you're replaced by this kind of block of cement. And then it's very hard to move or you can't think, do I get a manicure or jump off a cliff? It's slow. But it has nothing to do with burnout. You can burn out, but that doesn't necessarily lead to depression. To me, depression, and to scientists, it's nature and nurture. You could be born with genes for depression, but if you have a very loving home, they might not switch on. But I had a Holocaust in Evanston, and then I had the gene, so I won the lottery. So I don't think it has to do with pressure.
Thank you.
Over there.
The book ends with forgiveness, by the way. There is a conclusion.
Thank you. I don't know if this is a fact or not, but I usually sleep at like 2 or 3 in the morning every day, and it's not because I just don't like to sleep a lot. So my question is that at like 2 or 3 in the morning, I have different emotions about very common things. Maybe that's just like overthinking or the teenage hormones or whatever. But my logic is that I've talked to my dad about this, and a lot of people, like even my friends, they say that some things that they feel at or like 2 or 3 in the morning, I say that, okay, I'm going to talk to the person next day in the daytime, but I'm not able to relate to myself with what I felt in the middle of the night or morning and in the daytime. So I feel like I'm a completely different person, and I don't think that it's by personality or anything, but I just think that I have different emotions when it comes to me at 2 a.m. or me at 3
What's the
p.m.
emotion at 2 a.m. about? A few.
Too emotional, I guess, but like
What's
in
the
just like
emotion?
a normal way.
What?
In just like, so if I'm at 3 p.m. and I'm talking about like very normal things and I'm never offended, so somebody makes a normal joke and I'm like, okay, cool, funny. But then at 2 a.m., it does not like hit me like overthinking, but suddenly I'm just like, does this world make sense, or do I make sense, and all of these things. But I'm not able to relate to them.
Yeah, everybody can. Everybody can. By the way, those emotions and thoughts are pretty related. Everybody thinks that the body is something we have to drag around under our necks, like an old wedding train, but this is a onesie. So what you feel is what you think. As a matter of fact, you feel first, and then about 200 milliseconds later, it's translated into thoughts. So it's the same thing. Obviously, you've got nothing to do, and a lot of us like to get busy because we don't want to listen in to the horrible reviews that we're giving ourselves. So in the day, probably you stay real busy, because God forbid you listen to that transistor. At night, nothing's happening, so you're going to get the full blast of the bad news. Now, again, I don't want to go on about mindfulness, and this book is not about mindfulness. The last one was, but the monk talks about it, is all, it's an exercise, just like getting a six-pack. You don't go to the gym and get a six-pack by doing one sit-up. But by practicing something, if mindfulness isn't for you, figure out something else. Tai Chi, yoga, but not the kind I don't really love. I don't see the point of tying your ankles over your head in a bow. Or, being able to kiss your behind from both directions. I don't see the point. But it does take the focus into the body, and so does martial arts. So they're training their minds to go into another part of the brain. So with mindfulness, you're practicing watching those thoughts and listening to them. Because I love the science of it. When you're highly aroused at 2 o'clock in the morning, your amygdala's up. I mean, I love picturing it physiologically because then it makes me feel less afraid. I'm not haunted by demons. My amygdala's up. The cortisol's gushing. When you focus on a sense, taste, touch, sound, that amygdala automatically deactivates, and another part of your brain called the insula activates. You can't have them both on at the same time. So when you're sensing, insula. Now, you're not going to stay there because we're human creatures. The thoughts will take you. That's supposed to happen. You take your focus back to the sense, like breathing or feeling your feet on the ground. If you take it up and down, it's like your insula's a muscle, pretend, and it's getting more and more buff. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, when the incoming is coming, or a depression is starting, or you're hitting your tipping point, it's easier to pull to a sense. But you can't just do it for the emergency. You have to practice this. Like listening is also a sense. So just as an example, just listen for a minute. If you just listen to sound, and then your thoughts will come in, and that's the exercise. And you can do. You don't have to sit on, again, the gluten-free cushion in a bus queue, in the back of a taxi. When you're in the loo, in a queue, I always do it in a queue, for a second, just send your focus to a sense, and then watch your thoughts, watch your thoughts 1 minute. And then the neuroscientist is so great because he shows what happens in a brain that practices this. And I love that physiological evidence.
Over here.
Hello. So depression and anxiety usually coexist. There's a high comorbidity. Most people who have depression also suffer through anxiety, and both tell you entirely different things. Sometimes they are polar opposites. So depression can tell you that I don't care about anything, but anxiety would be like, oh no, you do. So what helps you categorize thoughts that this is my depression, and this is what my anxiety is saying, and this is who I am? 3 different shelves of thoughts. Does mindfulness help with that?
Well, I agree with you. Depression is not, to me, anxiety is on the human palate. We're supposed to feel it like mourning or sadness or guilt or shame. It's part of us. We have everybody's got it. But depression, again, is 1 in 4. So to me, it's not really, it may bring it on if you've got the genes, but you may come from an adorable background. If there's 5 brothers and sisters, one of them will have something. Now, as I said again, the thoughts when you have depression are different. I can tell now when it's coming. They're not the usual abusive, I'm not good enough, that's just me. Nobody likes me, blah. But this starts to be like if the devil had Tourette's, that's what it would sound like. There's almost no sound at all. It's white noise. And even my skin changes. I think people should really understand that when you have depression, your eyes are dead. They're not sad, they're not anxious, they're like dead sharks. And teachers should have pictures of what those eyes look like so they can spot it in their students. It's not sad. So the point of me doing mindfulness isn't, there's no miracle. It means that you can hear it coming, and then you can do stuff. Turn down social media. Because I used to get, and people who burn out too, we get really busy because we're so ashamed. So you have dinner parties for people you've never met. I'd show up at events. Once I showed up at a charity for Save the Puffin, like I care. Anything I was invited to because I wanted to do what you do. You don't want to hear your thoughts. But if you practice, you'll hear when the temperature starts to change. And I checked in a retreat, and the depression, it comes, boy. But it only went for 5 days, and that's hell, rather than 5 months. Because I didn't get depressed about depression. So that's the winner. But I'm still on medication, But if medication worked, we wouldn't have relapse. So you need 2 M's.
Next to you, here in the front.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
As you mentioned that it is important to observe our own experience, our own actions and thoughts. For me, the natural next step is that we criticize them a bit because I feel that it gives us a clarity about our own actions, about ourselves, and to an extent about others. However, in my experience, a lot of clarity is not desirable. So what are your thoughts on that? And if indeed it is not desirable, how can we stop the criticism of our own thoughts? That's my question.
Yeah. Well, as again, people define themselves as their negativity, that you believe that's you, and that's part of our default. I'm not hated, I'm not dumb, I'm not the reality of it, and yet, for some reason, this plays. When you do, I don't want to go on about mindfulness, there is a self that's the observer, and that's the bit, when you notice you're angry, well, you're not angry, you're noticing it. And I believe that's the self, is the one watching. And if you can it's kind of like walking on a tightrope, you can start to see where you are and where the abuse starts. Again, it's different areas of the brain. It's hard to tell, but cognitive therapy is about saying, this is the pathology, but this is who I am. I really, part of CBT or cognitive therapy is to have a therapist say, wait a minute, you're caught in a habit of thinking. That isn't you, it's a habit. It's like any habit where we get addicted, we're creatures of addiction and we like to repeat ourselves. But underneath that, if you can really sit back, you'll notice the crap, but you'll notice the gold too. It's a tightrope, though. I wake up every morning and it's a hellstorm. And then gradually, not always, not 100%, but it means that in the day I can focus. That's the magic thing. I can give attention to things, because that's the 21st century disease, is that we're distracted. And to have attention back, which I do get now, not always, nothing's 100%, but if you want my definition of happiness, it's being able to pay attention when you want and not get dragged to something else. That's as close to happiness as I can get. Because I missed my kids' childhoods because I was on the telephone. I don't know, I missed everything. But now when they talk to me, I can actually give them my attention, which is the most flattering thing you can give another person. But it means getting down your cortisol so that you can actually now leave your cocoon of self-absorption and try to imagine what this woman is like in her mind. If I'm too filled with this red mist, I can't give her my attention. And that's the most valuable thing. If you can't do that, it's not a self worth saving.
At the back. At the back over there.
At the back.
I think it might help the volunteers if you stood up when you had a question.
Hello.
Hi, where are you?
Yeah.
Okay, hi.
Hi. One of my friends, he's going through depression and he's having like suicidal thoughts. He refused to visit a psychiatrist. He refused to take any medication. So I really don't know how I can help him other than just being there.
Well, just being there is all you can do. I mean, you can't force somebody
Yeah.
to take medication. And again, shame comes with the package of depression, and you don't want to knock that up. But a lot of times, when I had depression, I would like to be with other people who have depression because I'm with my people, and we know we'll never bore them, you know, because we could talk about medication for hours, and we can say, it's such a pleasure to find out people who are more screwed than you are. And we can talk in our language. In London, well, in the UK, maybe I'm saying this, maybe you could start it. I have something called Frazzled Cafes, which is in partnership with Marks and Spencer's. It's our franchise shops where you can get underwear that are really good for really cheap. But they let me use their cafes, and we invite, you have to go online at frazzledcafe.org, and we invite 15 people throughout the UK, and they shut their cafe, and we have a facilitator trained at the Wellcome Trust, and they sit there and they meet every 2 weeks, so that's their tribe. And I really believe if I had had that, I still would have had depression, but it would have been tolerable. Like AA, what's with them? They're on every corner, right? They have partners. How did those people come up with that? I mean, most of them are drunk. No, I'm kidding. But I was very envious of AA. I know it's terrible, so I started it for people who want to speak human rather than the world is hard enough. You have to talk cocktail chatter, you know, at dinner parties and things, where you have to ask people how their kids are, like you give a shit. But at Frazzled, maybe you could do little groups. We need our tribe. We always needed our tribe. Maybe in India it's better because I know your families are very cohesive. In England and America, we're dispersed and we're all competing with each other.
Can I just button you for a quick question? You know, AA has what they call the higher power. I mean, there's some reliance on some notion of a God.
I don't know. Higher power could also mean the bit of you that observes. We also have the higher power in us. You call it the higher power, but another part of the book is we have a reptilian brain, which is 400,000 years old, and we have a brain that's 200,000 years old, which is in charge of rational thinking, awareness, compassion. We just don't really use it a lot, and I always say most of the time they're at war. I mean, that's why, can I say this? There are women who like to read Heidegger, but also want to screw the plumber. Because they're just two brains. But we can, and I really think in evolution we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to upgrade ourselves as much as we've upgraded our iPhones. And there is practices. Maybe we had compassion when we were young, but we forget about it because of the busyness, and it's too much of a gooey word, is that you can practice compassion, and that takes courage, and that's what it is to be human. It's turning on the oxytocin. It's a chemical that mothers have when they rock their babies. And it's a chemical people have when they bond. If you don't switch that on, and it's only through not empathy, because empathy means I'm feeling your pain. It's a first step. But if I feel your pain, now you have to help me. But compassion is a will to act, even if you just sit there. But it's an intention. And the neuroscientist, again, scanning the monk, not only do the mirror neurons flip on, which means I feel your pain, I feel when you're drinking water, I want it, but he has a part in the frontal cortex that is activated when he has an intention. It means he has an intention to act. And of course, we can all learn that. It's just using your higher brain. But you got to practice. Just be nice to your neighbor.
Can you stand up, please? Then the mic can go to you. Just stand up, yeah.
I can't hear you.
I know the light is getting in my eyes as well and hurting, but we'll be in darkness otherwise.
I can't hear.
I'm sorry about the light if it's getting in your eyes. It's getting in my eyes too, but I don't know what to do about it. Volunteer, anybody? Yeah, question.
Shut your eyes. What? I can't hear you.
Hello. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi.
I was diagnosed 2 years back with anxiety and around a year and a half with depression as well. And I've been trying to write about it. But the thing is, when I write about it, like the normal people, they don't get what I'm trying to say. So how do you write a book for, like, you use the word, like, illiterate people? Like, those who don't know what, like, because, like, if 1 in 4 of us is ill, like, maybe another one knows about it and the other 2 have no clue. So how do you write it in a way that the other people get what the others are feeling?
They'll never get what you feel, but Andrew Solomon is a genius. He wrote Noonday Demon, and in my book, not this one, in Frazzled, I have a depression while I'm writing it. So in the past, I wouldn't be able to write because words are gone. But again, I could write about it, and I think I write about it really well. Now, somebody that doesn't have depression will never feel it. I don't know what it is to have cancer. I don't know. So you can work all you want and write beautiful words. They'll never feel it, so forget it. But find people who do, and they'll get you completely. I don't think it's so important to write about it. It won't make you feel any better.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
I wanted to know that can mindfulness pull one out of solitude?
Can it pull you out of solitude or push you in?
Yeah, it does. Either way, it can either pull you out or it can either push you in.
Well, I don't think it's such a, I don't see it as, it doesn't make you act any different. It just means whatever is going on, you're observing it. But not all day. I mean, you don't do sit-ups all day if you want to, tight thing here. You just have to, for a few minutes a day, you're just exercising your brain, which means that if something suddenly says you should isolate yourself, you just might question it. And if you want to be extrovert, the brain is really for you to drive rather than being driven, and I think that's another thing that has to come in the future. Otherwise, we'll be wiped out by the noise. People say, oh, what's the future going to be? Well, don't worry about it, it's coming. So mindfulness or something, maybe there'll be a mental Fitbit, I hope. Because the physical ones, that nag you, like your mother, but maybe there's something that says your cortisol's too high, breathe or something. But it really is an exercise so that A, you've got more attention, B, you're faster, because everybody else is burning out while you cool your engine. And C, you get to know yourself. I think if you were, any action you can do without doing mindfulness. But when you're sitting in a queue or whatever, just practice it. It won't make you do anything. You're really making your brain healthy. All this buffing up, that we've been doing. When I came to England 30 years ago, people weren't even brushing their teeth. Now the whole country's in a gym, whole country. Because what, they're going to they want breasts on the front of their arms. I don't know what they want. But that was the zeitgeist. And now, what's going to make you live longer is lowering your cortisol. Because even if you don't care about yourself mentally, again, the public should know, when the cortisol's up, you burn out your immune system, the mind and the body are one. And then you're open season to all those diseases. It starts at the mothership, and then you're open for diabetes, infertility, obesity, premature aging, certain cancers. Everything can wipe you out because you let that cortisol run too hard. So for the sake of your health, I would do something.
But don't you feel that isolation, if practiced regularly, becomes a disease itself?
No. You're not in isolation. I could practice while I'm talking to this lady. There is no isolation. And don't forget, the reason you're exercising your mind is not so that you're alone somewhere in a cave, though I know some of you people like that. Sorry. But what happens is, again, if you can lower your cortisol just once in a while, a lot of times we need it. It's a turbo. But if in certain situations when you're with your kids or when you're on holiday, that if I lower my state and you pass that state to your kids, that's a good one for mothers, which I write about, and fathers, lower it, walk the talk, then your kids pick it up, and their friends pick it up, and the neighborhood picks it up, and the community and the planet. To me, that's politically responsible. Fix yourself and then go save the world. So it's neural Wi-Fi, which is my favorite expression. Whatever state you're in, we ripple it out. And that, I think, is what's going to change the world. It's not going to happen because of a politician.
I loved your answer. Thank you.
We have time for one more question, which is the lady here yeah, you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, I would like to ask, what are your views on that people these days want to glorify sadness? They feel that they write best when they are sad, when they have some sort of thing in their mind. You say that we have to be there for them. We are being there. Actually, we're addicted to their words. They write so well. But at the same time, like you said, the neuro Wi-Fi, it affects us. So what do we do? If we tell them that, you should...
Are they a good writer? Because then just let them go.
No, they're brilliant writers and they owe it to their sadness or their,
If you're talking about successful writers, like Edward St. Albans and Tyler, depressives, Doris Lessing, I really wouldn't tell them anything because that writing is sensational, and I like really dark writing. But if it's an amateur, I get a lot of books where people are just going, oh, poor me, and they're whining. I don't want to know. It depends how talented they are. I don't even like happy books, to be honest. I like them really Philip Roth down, but with great words. Poetic words that are dark, because we are all dark, but we're not all depressed.
So, ma'am, that's my question. How do we stop ourselves from getting affected? Because then it'll all be a dark world.
I don't agree with you. I think when I read about darkness, it makes me invigorated. It's like death makes you more alive. You have to face the dark, because that's half of us.
On which note, I will urge all of you to go and take...
I'll be signing it now.
Yeah, she'll
you
be
can always
signing
promote.
books. Please go up and talk to her and take a bit of Ruby Wax home with an autograph on it. Thank you so much,
Thank
Ruby.
you.
That was wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you.